Hi there, this is John for killerphp.com, and in this video what we're going to be doing is looking at how we can build our own homegrown MVC framework from scratch. We're going to be doing this with the help of PHP 5.3, and we're going to be building on some of the skills that we developed in the last video where we did some dynamic assignment of variable data and also looked at namespaces. So with these two bits of knowledge in hand, we're going to be able to write a small collection of classes that will help us dispatch requests across basically various requests in our application. Now, to do this effectively, before we get too far into this, you'll notice I have this test.php file that I had from the last video, and I'm just going to delete that, and we're going to be writing our own controllers in this set, so you need not worry. And I have my index.php file, which I'll explain in just a minute, and I also have these three other PHP files that I wrote in the last videos. So the user.php file extends model abstract, and model abstract is an abstract class that we defined. In other words, it's a father or a parent class to user. And what model abstract does is it has this magic method called call. And what call does is it automatically will get and set parameters in our application. So we're throwing exceptions in the cases where somebody doesn't put in the right variables, and in other cases everything should be fine. So we've got our model abstract, we've got our user class, not much going on here. We've got 4 protected properties, a constructor that lets us assign those properties very quickly, and a toString method where basically if we just echo the user, we're going to get this kind of string coming back to us. So in the last video we looked at how we could create these magic methods, whether it's construct or toString or call. And in the group object we have even less code. We just have 3 protected properties: users, name, and access level. So you could imagine that there's some kind of relationship between the group and the users, and all of this is easily defined using these magic methods. So down here you can see that I've created 2 instances of the user class, John and Emily, and then I'm simply passing them into an admin group as an array using the magic methods that we defined, with starting with set and so on and so forth. So to get things moving, we're going to have to start by actually creating a special file on our computer, which is a htaccess file. Now, the htaccess file is special because what it does is it basically lets us route requests to the same file. Now, typically there's a one-to-one correspondence between, let's say you've got this index.php file. If I create a new file and I say, I don't know, h1 hello.php, and I hit save, and I go back to my public folder here, and I call this hello.php. If I go back to Firefox and I go to hello.php, then I get hello.php, which isn't too surprising because there's a one-to-one correspondence between what you're seeing in the URI, basically what the URL is, and the files that are being served up by Apache in this case. Now we want to change that. We want to essentially parse the URI. The URI is a fancy way of saying URL. A URL is basically anything that starts with http:// and a URI is a more generic address. So it could be HTTPS, it could be FTP, or any kind of other address in that same sort of format. So a URI can be parsed, and from there we can actually dispatch different classes that'll handle or control that request. And that's exactly what a controller does, is it takes the request for a particular page and it figures out which classes need to be loaded, and then it figures out which methods need to fire to render that page. This is all going with the whole MVC framework that we were talking about in the last video. So In order to do this effectively, we need to start off by creating an htaccess file. Now, this might be a little tricky on a Mac, because on a Mac, when you want to create a hidden file, and that's what an htaccess file is, unfortunately, you need to use the command line. There are easier ways of doing it, but they generally end up with you configuring your computer a little differently, and that can be a little annoying. So the simplest thing to do is just to open up your command line. So on a Mac, it's using the terminal. On a PC, you might not have to do this, and I'm sure you can find some notes online about creating your own htaccess file. So I'm going to go to my home folder, into Sites, Killer PHP Public, and that's where I've got my hello.php and my index.php. So in my public folder, which I currently am sitting in, if I press pwd and I hit enter, you can see that I'm in Users, John, Sites, Killer PHP, and Public. So that's the folder that I'm currently sitting in. I'm going to be creating this new file called htaccess, but it starts with a dot, so it's actually hidden from the Finder. And if you're on Windows, you can probably just write .htaccess and you won't have a problem. So I'm going to use a tool called vi. And I'm going to say vi .htaccess, and I'm going to hit enter. And the first thing that I need to do is hit the I key, which will turn on the insert mode in vi. If you're unsure about this part, simply post something in the forum, the Killer PHP forum, and I'll try and guide you through it. You can also find plenty of tutorials online with mod rewrite, and they'll probably also be excellent. But anyways, so now with the insert at the bottom that I can see there, I know that I'm in insert mode. So whatever I put in is just going to be outputted to the file. So I'm going to type some stuff here, and the mod rewrite stuff is a little complicated, so it's probably best, I'm going to try and explain it as simply as possible. But basically what mod rewrite does is it allows you to rewrite how the web server is going to translate that request into the files that are loaded. So we basically want to tell Apache, which is our web server, that any request going to our site is going to go to index.php. It doesn't matter how complex it is, it doesn't matter if it's got all sorts of slashes and subfolders or what have you, it's always going to go to index.php. So the first thing I need to do is turn on the rewrite engine. And then I need to set some conditions. Now again, this is the kind of thing that you generally do once, you figure it out, and then you copy and paste it from one project to another, at least in my experience. So I'm going to see if I can adjust my font here so that you can easily see it. That's a little better. Okay, so you can see that I've got a %, open bracket, request, file name. So that's the file name. And then we'll do an s, and then or. So you can see it's almost like a programming language. We're going to do rewrite condition, %, again, curly brace, file name, -L, or I'm going to explain this in just a second, but bear with me. Rewrite condition, %, request, file name, close curly brace, -D. So these are the conditions that we want to deal with, where you're requesting a file name, whether I think it's through a symlink or directly or what have you. And now we're going to specify what that rule is. So the first, and these rules come in a certain order, so it's important to respect that order. Rewrite rule, well, we're going to open this with the hat, dot star, and then the hat, and then the $, and do a dash, and then NC and L, and these are flags that we're setting. So if you're really curious about this stuff, just look up mod rewrite online, and you can have your go at writing your own rewrite rules. But they're generally it's not my favorite language to be looking into. So anyways, once we get this up and running, you won't have to worry about it. So I'm going to reroute anything to index.php and C L. So what this is doing is it's basically saying if it can find the file, then it'll load the file. If it can't find the file, instead of just giving you that 404 error where it says, oh, I can't find it, blah, 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 it's going to route it to index.php, and it's going to let index.php handle it. So what this means is that if you've got images or CSS files or JavaScript files that don't necessarily need to be routed, you can have them be loaded by this directive. And if you've got PHP stuff that you want loaded, it'll get loaded by this directive. It'll all get routed back to index.php. So now I'm going to hit the colon, and you'll see at the bottom here that there's now 2 dots at the bottom. And I'm going to do W, which means write. Hit enter, and I should see something like .htaccess new written. And then I'm going to do colon, which puts us in command mode, and then Q. And hit enter. And we should be back at the command line. Now if I did this properly, nothing should change. If I refresh this, this still goes to hello.php. And if I go to /, nothing should happen. So let's just go to our index, and then let's just echo let's say we echo one of our users. So let's say I echo Emily. And hit echo. Then I'll get Emily Smith lives at Seattle. And if I put in, some nonsense URL and I hit enter, then I'm still going to get Emily Smith lives at Seattle. Whereas if I go back to my htaccess file and I comment out this line just by putting a pound at the beginning and hit write, then this is going to say object not found, error 404, I can't find it, talk to your webmaster. So this is a great way of basically taking any request and then running it through PHP. So I'm just going to go back here, and I'm going to go back to insert mode, delete that #, hit W, hit Q, and close the terminal. We don't need to think about it again. Okay, so now that we have this, we can start dispatching requests. And that's what we're going to be looking at in the next video. Thanks for listening.